Easily the weirdest shit I've seen all year, but if I had to choose, I'd become an otter, because otters are awesome. Just imagine doing flips in the water and stuff like that. Good God. Otters. The Lobster. So The Lobster is an absurdist romantic comedy directed and partially written by Yorgos Lanthimos. We follow the character David, played by Colin Farrell, who has been recently divorced and admitted into this strange and creepy and really weird hotel that basically gives their tenants 45 days to find another romantic partner or be transformed into the animal of their choosing. So the premise of this film is that relationships are extremely important and actually required. The regular couples are allowed to live in the city normally, while the single people, or the loners, roam throughout the forest and are essentially hunted by the people who live in the hotel to bring them back to help them find a companion. But alright guys, this movie is going to be really hard to talk about without spoiling things, so bear with me, I'm going to try my best. First and foremost, this movie is labeled as a comedy, but it is actually this dark, dreary drama with comedic elements and really loose use of the word comedic. The first half of this movie is actually really charming and does have a few chuckle-worthy moments and does have really clever writing. But then after that, it becomes extremely cruel and dreadful and actually painful to watch. This movie does get really violent in some spots that I thought were actually brilliant and pretty unforgettable. The world in this film is extremely interesting and original and frankly just weird. It's definitely something we haven't seen on the screen before. The atmosphere in this film is not pleasant whatsoever, and it really does encompass what the characters are going through. This movie had a feel that was really similar to Nymphomaniac, which was a movie that I actually enjoyed for what it was, but man, do these Europeans love their dark films. The thing I found most interesting about this movie was that you could tell that the writing was the most important aspect of this film. It is brilliant and odd and original and interesting. It's just fresh and it's heartfelt. But I still have my gripes with it as a screenplay, which I'm gonna get to later. What makes this movie so interesting is that it is essentially an allegory that challenges societal norms and modern relationships in the most raw and cruel fashion. I mean, there are layers upon layers upon layers of messages and meaning in almost every single aspect of this movie. You're definitely gonna have to watch this movie more than once to fully understand and fully appreciate the purpose of this film, but also to catch every specific piece of dialogue, every significant nuance, and every overarching theme that is throughout this movie. Now, the original score for this film was brilliant and beautifully composed, but to be completely honest, in some places is really out of place and just became annoying and uncomfortable to hear, which may have been the point. All of the performances in this movie are really great despite them being really different in the traditional sense, with Colin Farrell being the standout. John C. Reilly is also in this, and he happened to be my favorite character because he seemed to be the strongest one in terms of comedy and just actually being entertaining. I really wish he had a larger role in it. Although all of the performances were great in this movie in context of their world, all of the acting was emotionless, in which all of the actors would deliver their lines in the most monotone way and with blank expressions. Although I know this was done on purpose and I could see what the director was going for in terms of trying to juxtapose these emotionless characters with this raw, melodramatic world and plot, it frankly just made the movie boring. And even after you get used to it, it just makes the characters boring. Regardless of how artistic or intelligent a film is, if it cannot capture my attention and retain it for the duration of its runtime, then frankly, the purpose of the film was done in vain. I did not care for these characters at all. And frankly, I didn't care if they found love, became animals, got killed, or anything. I didn't care if anything happened in this movie. This movie is paced extremely slow to the point where you're like, okay, alright, I get what you're trying to do here. I can see what you're trying to do here, and I still don't care. Okay. Alright, no, just get on with it. Get on with it, please. Now back to the writing. Yes, it is apparent that a lot of thought was put into writing the script, and I appreciate the originality. But as a screenplay, the movie is entirely too self-indulgent, pretentious, and lacks direction in a lot of places. An example of that being that the film uses a narrator to explain how the characters think and feel, among other things, to make up for the emotionless performances and use of visual backstory. The narration was annoying and watered down the film since it was grossly overused. The worst part about this movie is that the second half of the film, which, slight spoiler alert, happens outside of the hotel, feels like it completely derailed and doesn't know how to end or where to go or what it's doing or what it's trying to be. The energy is almost entirely drained in comparison to the first half of the film where everything was so fresh and interesting, and the film fails to expand upon all these new interesting aspects that we are given in the forest and in the city. The excessive use of dead space, long shots, and awkward silence makes this movie severely less enjoyable to watch, to the point where the casual movie watcher will probably be encouraged to leave the theater. Seriously, there was a couple behind me that left after the first half. Smart. Guys, this is undoubtedly one of the most original and interesting premises in artistic films that I have ever seen. There are many things in this movie that worked for me, but even more that just didn't. And I really wanted to love this movie more than I actually did, but I can't lie to you all just because this movie is getting a lot of critical acclaim. I love artistic films, but those films better have every aspect on point, and there are just way too many dull ones here. Which is why I'm gonna give The Lobster a 6 out of 10. If you are a casual moviegoer, you will not like this movie. But if you appreciate film as an art form, this might be the one for you. There was a lot of great stuff to take away from this movie, but I cannot see myself rewatching this for a long time. I can say that the final scene in this movie is one of the most chilling, memorable, and perfectly executed endings that I have ever seen. I mean, I will never get those images out of my head. It is definitely one of my favorite film endings that are just left open for discussion, and I love stuff like that. But anyway, guys, The Lobster. Have you seen it? Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Is there something I'm missing? Is there something I just don't see? Please, let me hear your voice. As always, if you like this video, please hit that like button, guys. It truly does help. If you want to see any of my upcoming movie reviews, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.